What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Trust the Bank podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the podcast platforms, thank you so much. We really do appreciate you. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave us a review. We're doing a giveaway when we hit 50 reviews. I guess you don't have to give us 5 stars. We would appreciate it, though. But, this one's going to be a lot of fun. It's Combine week, so, next week's episode is going to be great. This weekend's live stream is going to be great, just talking about all those numbers. But we still got a good episode in store. We had the press conferences today. We're going to start with that first, and then we'll get into a couple of questions from you guys. But Joshua, let's just jump right into it. What do you think of John Harbaugh, Eric DeCosta? They had their press conferences today. What stood out to you?
What stood out to me was the question asked to John Harbaugh in regards if Lamar Jackson was in, if he was part of the war room in regards to, the new OC. And, John Harbaugh, he came off the womb being answering politically correct answers. He just know how to handle. He just know how to handle it well. When he was saying pretty much, with him doing all the interviews, it's hard to keep in contact with a player, especially a player that's focusing on football. In all reality, he focused on getting his chicken, in the words of Marshawn Lynch. But I mean, I don't know. To me, it sounded like Lamar really didn't have any input. Yeah, they may have talked, very vigorously once the season was over for maybe about 2 or 3 days. But they was really they was pounding the pavement with finding this new OC. They knew that this new OC was going to play into the betterment and improvement to this offense, and also for possibly the next QB's future, hopefully Lamar Jackson. But John Harbaugh, he just know how to answer those questions, in a good way and not give all the sauce.
Yeah, and I thought, I'll talk about that. I thought it was so funny how Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, the biggest thing that I kept hearing was I've been texting Lamar.
Yeah,
that's what they kept saying. Yeah, we've been in constant communication through text, and that's just kind of interesting. Where it's okay, that makes sense, but it's weird that they're saying it like that. Mm-hmm. Phrasing it in that way, but it also shows a good thing of we know Lamar and Harvs are close. We know Lamar has great respect for Eric DeCosta, and he talked about that whole contract situation, and it it wasn't anything drastic or whatever. And Eric DeCosta was yeah, there are some challenges with it, but at the same time, we're expecting to keep Lamar here. We're expecting to get a deal done. And so, and he also, Eric DeCosta also mentioned it was we got 6 plans,
Yeah.
it's not like Lamar or nothing. It's okay, we're going after Lamar for an extension. Don't get the extension, franchise tag. We can't do the franchise tag, then we're going to trade him. If we have to trade him, who are we trading him to? Okay, what are the picks going to become that we trade him to? Do we draft him this year? It's all planned out, guys. Yeah. The Ravens are not just going into this, like Browns, and just have no idea what's going on, and then just going to completely whiff and mess up because of one small situation. But with regards to the offensive coordinator, Joshua, that you brought up, I thought it was also interesting how they were Harbaugh brought up he never really got a chance to break down Georgia's film with Todd Monken and sit in that room with him. And I thought that was really interesting, where it's okay, you're hiring somebody for a job. I'm sure most of the people watching here, if you haven't, it's totally fine. Most of the people watching, listening, they've been to a job interview, right?
Yeah.
Every time I've ever been in a job interview, I've been in a fair amount of job interviews.
Yeah.
They're hey, see this on your recent experience. Can you take me through what your day was like? Can you take me through what you were doing? What are some things that you showed there? I would assume that interviewing an offensive coordinator, you're hey, you were just at Georgia. How was it game planning for them? Because you can see, most of the time when you're getting hired, unless you're doing a portfolio job, that you require paperwork, they're not going in and being man, when he was, I before my current job, I was stocking shelves at Costco. They weren't going man, I checked out them shelves, man. That wasn't very good. No, they're not doing that. But if you go in and you go for like a photography job, they're gonna be like, okay, show us your work. They're gonna show them your photos, and they're like, oh, this is interesting. Why did you choose to do this? And they're gonna point things out. I feel like you'd be like, hey, you just won 2 national championships. Let's watch national championship game at least.
Yeah,
why'd you call this play? Like what, what were you thinking here? You're up, at one point it was 10-7 in that game. It was a very close game at one point. And it was like, why were you going with this play? One of the big plays that broke the game open, I think, was a Stetson Bennett read option. Hey, what in that situation was like, okay, we want to get Stetson's legs going. It's weird that they like didn't do that. And again, I think that comes back to like that report that came out where it was like Todd Monken's camp basically told the Ravens, like, you hire him or he's taking the Tampa job. And like, it seemed like he kind of his camp kind of strong-armed the Ravens into hiring him right away. Cause the Ravens were like, we want to interview Eric Bieniemy. We want to interview Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah.
And it was like, right when Eric Bieniemy becomes available for interviewing, right after the Chiefs win, it was like Ravens hired Todd Monken. It was like, wait a minute, a day ago, it was like Eric Bieniemy high on the list, and then
literally, it was Eric Bieniemy and Brian Johnson supposed to be back to back.
Yeah, we didn't interview any of them because per reports, like his camp was like, we're gonna take this job unless you give us this job right now. And the Ravens did it, and so I'm not upset with the hiring process. I'm not upset that we hired him, but I just think that it's really weird for a report for him to say, someone that's so politically correct and always, given that answer of like, oh man, I don't want to give out too much information, for him to be like, yeah, we never broke down film. I mean, that shows you how much trust John Harbaugh has in his offensive coordinators, because Harbaugh may not be super interested in that. Like, he talked about how he talked ball with him and, overall schematics, but not breaking down film was really interesting. He did say, though, not breaking down Georgia film. So I'm wondering, maybe he broke down Cleveland. Maybe they looked at Tampa Bay. I don't know. I just thought that was really weird that would come out.
I mean, and we also got to think about. We also got to put in perspective too. Even though it sounds like the Todd Monken's camp put us kind of in a bait and switch type of situation. This is a recommendation from the Harbaugh family as well. So sometimes we all know when you do go to college, it's not all about. Sometimes when you get your degree, it's not about what you know, it's who you know once you graduate. And you could be surpassing that person that may have 18 years of experience, and you could be right in their seat because you done did an internship, you done connected with whoever and higher up, anything of that nature. So we definitely gotta put that in perspective. And we also got to think about this too. John Harbaugh is not an X's and O's guy. So, like you said, man, it may not been too much of a high priority on this list to see. Because me personally, as a head coach, if I'm bringing in a new OC and defensive coordinator, excuse me, you all, I would be throwing all different type of situations. How would you adjust in game? If we played this team, what would be our game plan? X, Y, Z. How would you prepare? If you had these type of players with this type of skills and this type of personnel, what would you do? Because honestly, one of my main questions to Todd Monken is, what did you expect for your offense to do when you didn't have no big body wide receiver and all you had was tight ends? Did you really believe that you, Stetson Bennett and company, was going to make the run that you all did? Because that's huge. That's huge. In college, just to use your running back, a mid-tier QB, and some big body tight ends. I mean, granted, those big body tight ends, they play like Calvin Johnson and and other big body wide receivers that's gone on and retired. But it was still amazing to see how you all, still made yourselves relevant, because we all know, even in the NFL or any type of sports world, when you lose certain pieces of your team that was a core part of your offense or defense, it kind of hurts you in the long run. But they took that and made it their strength and made it to the natty. So I definitely would have asked questions like that to pick at someone's brain just to see how they operate and how they move. But it was, we got to be real. Monken was a recommended hire.
Yeah. And another thing that they brought up was Todd Monken's going to have, some say in the draft process, right? They're going to feel his input. And, Joshua, you talked about like you're coming into a situation, you don't know who your quarterback's going to be with the Ravens. You don't know who your wide receivers are going to be. You don't have a big body wide receiver. You have 2 tight ends. We know you're familiar with that. But, coming into that situation, I think